Leaving is not betrayal, it's legacy. Now, I know that line is going to hit some leaders pretty hard because one of the deepest fears many leaders carry is this. What if I pour into them and they walk away and they leave? What if I invest in their growth, sharpen their thinking, expand their capacity, teach them everything I know, trust them with more, develop them deeply, and then they take all of that and go? What if I help build them up for somebody else to benefit from? What if my investment becomes someone else's gain? What if the very people I develop outgrow the space I created for them? Friend, that fear is real. And because it's real, many leaders never say it out loud. They just lead around it. They withhold, they limit access, they delay development, they keep people useful, but not fully stretched. They train for output, but not for growth. They protect the organization by quietly capping the people inside it. And on the surface, that can look strategic, but underneath, it is often fear. Fear of being left, fear of being replaced, fear of building someone who may not stay, fear that development is too expensive if retention is not guaranteed. But today, I want to tell you something plainly. If your leadership only feels safe when people stay small enough to need you, that is not legacy leadership. That is insecurity disguised as stewardship. And it costs far more than most leaders realize. Because the leader who refuses to develop people to protect against loss often creates the very loss they were trying to prevent. That is what we are talking about today, the development dilemma. Because the question is not simply whether your team is staying. The deeper question is whether your leadership is building people in a way that outlasts you. That is where we are going today. I strongly encourage you to buckle up. Let's go. So, as always, we're going to start with the pattern. A leader says she wants strong people around her. She says she wants a team that can think, a team that can lead, a team that can grow, a team that can carry weight, a team that can take initiative. But when the opportunity comes to really develop someone, something tightens. She hesitates to share more. She hesitates to mentor deeply. She hesitates to expose them to certain rooms, certain decisions, certain levels of strategy. She keeps them close enough to be useful, but not always free enough to become powerful. Why? Because somewhere beneath the surface is an unspoken calculation. What if I invest all of this and they leave? So development gets rationed. People get what they need to function, but not always what they need to flourish. They get training for the role, but not always formation for the future. They get enough to contribute, but not always enough to expand. And then over time, the leader starts to notice something. The best people become restless. The strongest people begin to plateau. The most capable people start sensing the ceiling. The people with the most hunger start looking elsewhere for the growth they cannot get here. And then the leader feels betrayed. But sometimes the issue is not disloyalty. Sometimes the issue is developmental starvation. That's the pattern. Because people who are called to grow do not stop needing growth just because a leader is afraid of losing them. And if they cannot grow with you, many of them will eventually grow beyond you. Now that's hard, but it's true. I want you to pause and ask yourself this question. Where in my leadership have I been protecting against loss by limiting someone's growth? Sit with that for a minute because the answer will show you where fear may be shaping your leadership more than legacy is. Now, let me disrupt something because I'm the disruptor. If you have felt this fear, it does not automatically mean you are selfish. It may mean something deeper. It may mean you have poured into people before and watched them walk away. It may mean you have built something costly and know what it feels like to lose key people. It may mean you have been left holding weight after someone else benefited from what you gave. And it may mean you know the emotional and operational cost of rebuilding after departure. So let me say this very carefully. Many leaders do not resist development because they don't care about people. They resist it because development feels vulnerable. It feels expensive. It feels risky. It feels uncertain. And it feels like opening your hand around someone you would rather keep close. That matters. It really does. Because if development feels emotionally unsafe to the leader, the team will eventually feel the effects of that unsafety. They may not have language for it, but they will feel it in the lack of stretch. They'll feel it in the lack of opportunity. They'll feel it in the lack of trust. And they'll feel it in the invisible ceiling that says, grow, but not too far. Shine, but not too brightly. Expand, but not beyond what feels comfortable to leadership. And once that message gets into the culture, something breaks. Not always loudly, but steadily. Because strong people can feel when they are being managed for retention instead of developed for legacy. And when they feel that, the relationship with leadership changes. Not because they have become disloyal, but because they have become aware of the ceiling. That is why this conversation today matters so much. Because the issue is not just whether people leave. The issue is whether your fear of losing them is changing the kind of leader you are becoming while they are still with you. That's the deeper issue. Now let's move into the tension. In chapter 5, yes, my book is about to drop April the 20th, but you can pre-order it right now. But let me tell you about chapter 5. The core insight there says this. The leader who develops people and loses them has built their reputation. The leader who hoards people and stunts their growth loses them anyway, but also loses their integrity, their culture, and eventually their best people first. Stewardship, not ownership, is the posture of a legacy-minded leader. That's the line. Because a lot of leaders behave as though people are safest when they are kept close. But the truth of the matter is, people are healthiest when they are developed well. And there's a difference between stewardship and ownership. Ownership says, these are my people. Their growth should benefit me. Their loyalty should protect me. Their future should stay close enough to affirm what I built. But stewardship says, these are people I have been entrusted to lead well. My job is not to possess them. My job is to develop them faithfully. That is a radically different posture, and it changes everything. Because once you shift from ownership to stewardship, development stops feeling like loss prevention and starts becoming legacy work. Now, the question is not, how do I keep them forever? But the question becomes, how do I lead them so well that whether they stay or they go, Their growth bears witness to the kind of leader I was. That is a different standard, and it's a higher one because the truth is this: you can stunt people and still lose them. You can underdevelop people and still watch them walk out the door. You can hoard access, hold back opportunity, keep the ceiling low, ration growth, and still not keep the people you were trying to keep. Except now, when they leave, they don't leave speaking well of your leadership. They leave depleted. They leave disappointed. They leave underused. They leave with a story about limitation instead of transformation. That is the tension here. Because leaders who fear losing people often think withholding is protection. But withholding does not create loyalty, it creates frustration. I want you to pause here and answer this question honestly. Am I trying to build loyalty through development or through limitation? That question is exposing because only one of those produces healthy culture, and only one of those reflects legacy-minded leadership. Now let's widen the frame a bit. This is bigger than just retention. I hope you know that. This is about the meaning of leadership itself. If leadership is merely about keeping talented people close, then development will always feel dangerous. But if leadership is about multiplying strength, expanding capacity, and building something that outlives your direct control, then development becomes essential. That's the bigger frame. Because legacy is not measured only by who stayed. Legacy is measured by what grew because you let it. But who became stronger because you poured? What character was sharpened under your leadership? What capacity was awakened? What courage was called forth? What maturity was developed? What impact continues because you did not lead with a closed fist? That's legacy. And leaders who understand that stop seeing every departure as betrayal. They start asking better questions. Did I lead them well? Did I build them honestly? Did I expand them faithfully? Did I steward my influence with integrity? Did I create an environment where people could become more whole, more strong, more capable, and more aligned? Because if the answer is yes, then even when someone leaves, your leadership still remains fruitful. That is what many leaders need to hear because some of the pain around people leaving is real. I'm not denying that. But real pain can still produce distorted leadership if it is not examined. And distorted leadership always leaks into culture. A fearful leader builds a fearful culture. A controlling leader builds a constrained culture. A scarcity-minded leader builds a low-ceiling culture. But a legacy-minded leader builds differently, entirely differently. They build with open hands. They build with intention. They build people, not just positions. They build maturity, not just productivity. They build for long-term fruit, not just immediate convenience. That is what this chapter and this video is pressing toward. So here's a practical exercise. Think of one person on your team who has real potential. Now ask yourself this question. If I was not afraid of losing them, how would I be leading them differently right now? Whew. Breathe in, breathe out, inhale, exhale, because I felt that question. That question is going to tell you the truth. because fear always leaves fingerprints. And once you see those fingerprints, you can stop letting them shape your leadership. So, how do you begin to lead differently here? Let me give you several anchors. Number one, name the fear honestly. You cannot heal what you keep spiritualizing or hiding or reframing without honesty. If part of you is afraid to develop people because you do not want to lose them, say that to yourself plainly, not to shame yourself, but to tell the truth, because unnamed fear quietly becomes leadership policy. Mhm. Number two, reframe development as stewardship. People are not proof of your worth because they stayed, and they are not a personal betrayal if they grow beyond the role they currently hold. Your job is to steward people well while they are in your care. That means building them honestly, correcting them clearly, trusting them meaningfully, stretching them wisely, and investing in them faithfully. That is stewardship. Number three, stop measuring return only by retention. This matters. Not every investment in people will pay you back through permanence. Some of it will pay back through reputation, some through culture, some through trust, some through referrals, some through the caliber of people who want to work with you because they know you actually develop people. That is still fruit. And leaders who understand that are less likely to lead from panic. Number four, build development into the culture, not just the role. D- Do not only train people to do what serves your immediate need, develop them as leaders. Develop their thinking, develop their judgment, develop their confidence, develop their decision making, and develop their character. Because if all you build is role competence, you may get output. Yeah, you will. But if you build people, you create legacy. And that's what matters. Anchor number five, understand that the best people often need room to expand. This is not a threat, it's a reality. Strong people need challenge. Strong people need trust. Strong people need stretch. And strong people need pathways for growth. If those pathways don't exist, they will often go find them. That is not automatically betrayal. Sometimes it's simply evidence that growth kept calling. Number six, let your leadership be the kind people remember with gratitude, not recovery. This one is strong but necessary. Some people leave leaders and need to recover. All I'm going to say about that is been there, done that in my professional life. Other leaders, others leave leaders and remain grateful. To this day, as long as I have been in education, I still talk about principal I had in my second year of teaching. She forever changed the educator I was to become. To this day, every time I see her, I talk about the impact that she made on my life in just one school year. Changed everything for me. The difference is often how development was handled. Did the leader build them with honesty and generosity? Or did the leader use insecurity, limitation, and fear to keep them small? That distinction matters because even when someone leaves, your leadership should not become something they needed to heal from. Oh. I could tell you about a time in my professional life. I'll just call it the 3-year storm. Yes, I can relate to this. And what I've been sharing all week, let me just tell you, I'm not just shooting from the hip here. I am sharing with you my lived experiences. I am sharing with you what I've learned through education, through ministry, through everything as an entrepreneur. This is what I know to be true. So when you're listening to this, whether it's on a podcast, whether it's on YouTube or on any of my platforms, I want you to hear my heart today because I know what I'm talking about and I know this works. So let me paint a picture for you. A leader has someone on her team with real promise. The person is sharp, they're hungry, or as Les Brown could say, they're hungry. They're faithful, they're capable, they're growing. And the leader sees it. She sees the potential, she sees the strength, she sees what this person could become with the right investment. But instead of leaning in fully, she starts pulling back in subtle ways. She gives just enough opportunity, but not too much. She shares just enough access, but not too much. She trains for usefulness, but not always for expansion. She keeps the person close to the current role, but does not always open doors toward the next level. Why? Because somewhere inside, she's afraid. Afraid that if this person fully grows, they may outgrow her space. Afraid that if she pours too deeply, somebody else may benefit. Afraid that development may accelerate departure instead of loyalty. So the person stays for a while, but over time, they begin to feel it. They feel the ceiling, they feel the restraint, they feel that growth is welcome only up to a point. They feel that usefulness is safer than full expansion. And eventually, something shifts. Maybe they leave physically, maybe they leave emotionally before they ever resign. Maybe they stay, but stop stretching. Maybe they remain loyal in body, but no longer bring their full self to the work. That is the cost. Not because the leader lacked care, but because care was being shaped by fear instead of stewardship. And this happens more than many leaders want to admit. That is why this chapter and this video matters so much. Because trying to keep people by limiting their growth often produces the exact opposite outcome. The leader loses what they were trying to protect, and the organization loses what could have become if people had truly been developed well. That is why the reframe matters so much. Again, I say, leaving is not always betrayal. Sometimes it's evidence that your leadership produced growth strong enough to travel. That's not failure. That's fruit. That's legacy. So here we are. We're at that fork again. Every day this week, we've been at the fork. It's decision time because you've heard so much. We've shared, we've talked, I've questioned, you've answered, but it's decision time. And it is your right and your choice. You can keep leading from fear, measuring success by proximity, guarding access, limiting growth, and hoping that smaller people feel safer to keep. Or you can make the harder but healthier decision to become a leader who develops people with open hands. That is the decision. Do you want control or do you want legacy? Do you want people who stay small, small enough to need you? Or do you want people who grow strong enough to honor what they learned under you, even if their path expands? Do you want your culture shaped by fear of loss? or by faithful stewardship? Do you want to be remembered as a leader who held people back or as a leader who helped people become more than they were when they arrived? That choice matters because leadership is not tested only by how people perform while they are with you. It is also revealed by what kind of people they become because you led them. That is the deeper measure. It reminds me of an old hymn that says, "May all who come behind us find us faithful." Is that the legacy you want? I know that's what I want. And yes, some people will stay. Yes, some people will leave. But your job as a leader is not to manipulate the outcome through limitation. Your job is to lead in such a way that growth becomes the testimony. That's legacy, not possession, not panic, not fear-based restraint, legacy. Before we close, here's your final reflection for today. If one of my strongest people left tomorrow, would I be able to say that I truly developed them well while I had them? Sit with that. Only you can answer that honestly, because the answer will tell you whether you are leading from stewardship or from fear. And that answer changes everything. And that is why I am writing this book. Is my team growing because I lead them? Because many leaders think their people problem is retention, when sometimes the deeper issue is the fear shaping how they develop people they have been entrusted to lead. This fifth chapter in the book, this fifth episode in the video series called The Development Dilemma, is about exposing that fear and calling leaders into a higher posture. Stewardship instead of ownership, legacy instead of limitation. So the Leadership Strategy Guide is available right now for pre-order. And this week's video series has given you a live preview of the entire 5 internal shifts at the center of the book. The official launch, when it'll actually drop and you can get instant access to the download, will be Monday, April 20th. But the pre-order, it's available right now. You need to get it. You need to make sure you are locked in and ready to be the first to receive the instant access. So if this conversation is helping you see your leadership more honestly, go ahead, pre-order the book, get it. And if you have been following this series in real time, I want you to DM me the word growing, or you can drop it in the chat. I read the chat and the comments, so you can get in at this level right here, right now, and let me know that you've been with me on this journey. That is the pre-sale keyword for this launch week and for next week, growing. Because what we have done in this series is more than talk about team dynamics. We have uncovered 5 leadership patterns, or as I like to call them, 5 leadership keys that quietly keep teams from thriving: trust, control, documentation, vision, and development. And the invitation now is simple. Don't just watch the series, do the work. Let the questions confront you. Because, see, the book complements the series. They're not verbatim, they're not one and the same. You will find things in the book that are not here in the video series, and vice versa. So let the questions in the book confront you. Let the patterns surface. Let the leadership shift. Because the goal is not just to have a team that stays near you. The goal is to become the kind of leader under whom people truly grow. I'm Dr. Rhonda Simmons, your leadership formation advisor, and I've enjoyed the journey with you. The question is your team growing because you lead them? Only you can answer that.